You should get a notification. All right, so thank y'all for joining me for the overview of the Nuventive Improvement Platform, as well as the checklist for 2024-2025 IE cycle training. So I think most of y'all will be familiar with the Nuventive Improvement Platform. If you're not, this is the online digital repository that East Texas A&M University has selected to house and provide the opportunity for reflection on assessment data for both our academic programs, our institutional support units, operational units, strategic planning, all those bits and pieces that go into keeping the university running. So whenever you log into Nuventive, you're going to do that through the IE webpage or through MyLeo. Whenever you log in, you're going to find your home screen for whatever assessment unit you last left off on, if you have access to more than one assessment unit. If you only have access to one assessment unit, it's going to take you to the home screen for that unit. If you have more than one and need to navigate between them, you can come up here to this white bar that will have the academic program name or the sample unit name in there. Click, and then it will open all of these options up for you to scroll through. You're only going to see the options that are available to you, so don't worry, you're not going to have a big long list to wade through like you have here, but if you were, for instance, the IE author for both the undergraduate and graduate sociology programs, you would have them there and be able to toggle between them by clicking on this drop-down list. So whenever you log in, you come to your home screen, you should see a table here. One of the things that's going to be really important to keep in mind is that this is going to display all data for all time for your unit. So if you're looking at this and you're like, yikes, I know that last year I wasn't assessing critical analyzation decision making. I was only assessing these 2 units. Why is this still here? Just know that this is going to be that historical data, so that really rich, long data, rather than just the last assessment cycle. You can filter by coming through and identifying your learning outcome status, the planned assessment cycle, if you want to only look at the most recent or even, back to 2019, and even the reporting period. So again, if you really want to focus or target this home screen report, you're able to do that. I wouldn't worry too much about that. This is just going to kind of serve as a landing page for you. The really important parts are going to be in your navigation. So if you come up here to this main menu, these 3 horizontal white lines, it's going to open up your navigation menu. And this is really going to be the meat of helping you navigate through your assessment unit. So part of the broad overview, not the checklist for 24-25, but what I want to cover with y'all is going to be program information if you are new to assessment or you want to familiarize yourself. When you click on the program information list, it's going to open up general information, assignments, and unit personnel table. In the unit personnel table, you'll be able to see who all has access to that assessment unit and what role they hold. So if you need to know who the IE author is, who your IE representative is, who your reviewers are, that type of thing, you'll be able to see them in this unit personnel table. There's also an assignment function here that is not used very widely, mostly because the Nuventive Improvement Platform does not support inter-system communication or emails outside the system. But this assignment function can be utilized if you have an assessment unit that has multiple authors. Maybe you have one author for each learning outcome. And so you want to be able to say, specifically, hey, Allison, you are on learning outcome number 1. Amanda, you are on learning outcome number 2. They can go to this assignment table. You can set up those assignments, and then they can see this information there in the assignment table. So it's not quite as mixed up on who's responsible for what. In the general information, however, whenever you click on it, it's going to bring up some of the basic information about your assessment unit. Now, I'm in a sample unit, so you'll notice that this is not well or widely populated. For our academic units or support units, you'll have a bit more information. But you will be able to see for an academic unit, what college or department you're from, any specific options or emphases, concentrations, tracks, etc. And then the program mission statement. So this is going to be really helpful if you want to look at mapping, or if you're new to your unit and really want to refamiliarize yourself with what the mission statement is. You'll notice here that this one hasn't been updated for a while, right? Because it still references Texas A&M University Commerce. You can see up here the date that this was last edited. So if you are working on updating things and you just want to double check to make sure that you're referencing the correct institution, or if your department has a new mission statement. You can just make sure that this is all up to date and correct by coming over to these vertical ellipses here, clicking on them, click open, and then I'll open up where you're able to make your edits there. And so for instance, if I want to go ahead and edit from A&M Commerce to ETMU, I can make that change, click save. And now when I close and navigate back out, you'll be able to see that edit reflected immediately. So now I am transitioning back to the talking through that checklist for the 24-25 cycle. So that was kind of the broad overview of just catching up on program information now that we are East Texas A&M rather than A&M Commerce. So we're going to be working through that checklist. If you don't have a copy of that checklist, you can go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll share it with you after this session. Essentially what it's going to do is take you through the steps that are necessary to get done what needs to be done by that September 1st due date. So what we'll be working through is adding assessment results, reviewing the assessment plan, updating mapping, that type of stuff. So whenever you log in, I'm going to go back to the home page. Let's say that you've logged in, you have all this really rich, beautiful assessment data just sitting there ready to be entered. You are so excited. You set aside 2 hours. No one's going to bother you. And you go, I just need to add my assessment results and update my assessment plan. What we're going to do once you come into this home screen, you're going to come to your main menu and then navigate down to plan and results. If you have been using the Nuventive Improvement Platform with us a few years ago, you'll know or remember that those used to be separate buttons. Essentially, they would navigate to different areas. Our assessment plan and results are now nestled together to help, one, help with organization, but two, it really provides a more cohesive picture of the story of assessment for your unit. So you're going to come to plan and results. You're going to identify your student learning outcomes or your assessment goals based off the plan assessment cycle. So if I'm wanting to know what SLOs or goals do I need to report 24-25 data for, what am I, on the hook for, essentially, come down to this planned assessment cycle and look for 24-25. That should be there because that should have been created last cycle as your assessment plan. If you log in and you don't see anything that has 24-25, first come up to your filters and make sure you don't have anything filtered because that's gonna, block or not show anything in there. And it may simply be that the person before you didn't add that planned assessment cycle like they were supposed to. And so if that's the situation, reach out to me and we can meet this week to talk through that and figure out how to resolve that. If you log in and you're like, yikes, this is a lot of SLOs or goals, maybe you've inherited a really robust strategic plan and you really just want to see what you need to focus on, you can come up here to this planned assessment cycle and filter by just 24-25. And that will show you just those things that we're going to be looking for assessment results on. You can also come over here to the outcome type. If you have different types, we have some units that have learning outcomes as well as program outcomes. You're able to filter there. The difference between these, this is a quick overview. A learning outcome is going to focus on what students should be learning as a result of being in your program. They often focus on kind of end of program type learning or outcomes, as a result of being in the social work program at East Texas A&M University, students will be able to articulate X, Y, and Z, that type of thing. We're also looking for incremental and ongoing student learning outcomes, so demonstration of learning as students are engaged in the program, not just at the very end, because it's really hard to capture that information only at the end and be able to identify those needed changes to continue to support and improve learning for your students. A program outcome on the other side is going to be more operational type outcomes, especially for academic programs. If you have a program that has licensure or placement or any kind of standardized testing that's external to the university that you're not using for learning outcome measurement, we can add those as program outcomes. So if you're wanting to be able to say, 100% of my students have passed the licensure exam that's required for them to go on to graduate school, whatever that might be, that could potentially be a learning outcome. That's really maybe more of a program outcome. If you really want to look at retention, engagement, graduation for your specific program, we can also add those as program outcomes as well. So that's just an option that's available and not required. So now, right, we're looking at the 24-25 assessment plan. These are the two things that we need to report results on. So if we think of how we normally operate, right, we want to report the data that we have now and then plan forward. So what I recommend operationally is reporting your results for the 24-25 cycle and then planning forward for the 25-26 cycle. So to be able to come in to edit or add those results, you can either double click on the bolded text here for your SLR goal name, and it'll bring you into this card system that we'll work in. Or if you forget that or you don't want to double click, you can always come over to these ellipses here and they'll open up to your various options. So in this case, we want to edit, we click open, and it'll take you to the same exact place where we're not able to edit our learning outcome. Then come in and see the assessment methods that are associated with that learning outcome and the results. So just a quick overview of this card system, because this is going to be really important. Because this is an academic program sample, we are using student learning outcome language. If I were in the support unit sample, this would be a goal. So if you are on a support unit, please don't worry. We are not expecting you to have learning outcomes unless you are a student service unit, in which case you might have one or two, but this would be a goal language for you. So under the student learning outcome or goal, you're going to have a few items that, again, are going to be really helpful. You're going to have your learning outcome or goal name. This is going to become that short reference. If you're talking to me, if you're talking to your director, if you're talking to a peer, you'd be able to say, hey, so that professional behavior and action learning outcome that I'm working on, I'm really struggling, or it's going great, or I need to change something up. Rather than, hey, that learning outcome number one, I have a test that I'm giving that's going to be part of that. No, no one knows what learning outcome one is, or very few people may know what learning outcome one is. So using this shorter name really kind of helps in that reference. And then this is that longer explanation of the learning outcome itself. So as a result of being in this program, we want students to be able to exemplify professional social work behavior expected of the industry. This is an active learning outcome. You're able to come here and see the assessment cycles for which it was assessed. So we have 22, 23, 23, 24, and then 24, 25. That's really going to be the one that we're reporting data on. If we were phasing this out, we would want to switch this from active to phased out and then add that phase out date. Again, it's not required, but it's helpful just for that historical reflection information. And then again, if you wanted to add program outcomes, this is where you'd be able to find your outcome type. If you make any changes, let's say that this is now for whatever reason, the basket weaving industry. If you make any changes and then try to move on, it's going to catch you here and give you a warning that you've made unsaved changes. This is a little bit of a double negative though, because notice if you click OK, you're going to leave the page without saving your changes. It's not going to save them for you. So you'd want to click cancel, save, and now you can move on. Again, though, we have accessed this card for the professional behavior and action learning outcome or goal. We want to add our results. So from this learning outcome card, you don't have to navigate, by assessment method and then result. You can come straight over to your result card here. So once you're in the results, what you need to remember is that if you have multiple assessment methods, which this learning outcome does, they'll be in bold text here at the top. So here's an assessment method, and then here's an assessment method. So if you have multiple assessment methods for this goal or learning outcome that are being assessed for the cycle, you need to add results for each of those assessment methods. So for this learning outcome, I would be adding assessment results for the 24-25 cycle for this psychology 410 assessment method, and then this sociology 341 assessment method. Again, this is a sample unit, so it's not consistent in the reporting. So please don't worry about the fact that I don't have a 23-24 result in here. We're just going to be operating from the idea that I did. To add your result at this point, look for a plus sign. So if we want to ever add anything, we're going to look for a plus sign and a green circle. So for this assessment method, here's the plus sign to add a result. When I scroll down from this assessment method, here's the plus sign to add the result. So for the psychology 410 assessment method, I'm going to come back up here to add result, click on that, and it's going to give me this empty result card. And this is what I'll be filling out with my assessment result information. Notice that here on the assessment date, it's going to automatically populate with today's date. That is normally perfectly fine. If for any reason it's important that you feel that that date reflects another date, maybe it's some kind of volunteer experience or some kind of cumulative, presentation that actually occurred on March 3rd and you want to change that date, you can. It's not necessary. I normally recommend that that just be left alone. And then we're going to come to our reporting period. And so this is going to be that reporting period that we are reporting on, which again is 24-25. You'll notice that's going to be the one at the very top. We don't have future reporting periods in here because we don't have that data. So those are added later on. So it's just kind of remember 24-25. It's going to be at the very, very top. And then here's where you're going to add your result discussion. So we're going to want to provide a detailed description of results that includes the number of students assessed, or if you're a support unit, the number of services provided, number of people supported, wherever that might be. We're looking for that in equals. Add your descriptive data, and then an analysis and interpretation of results. One of the things that I think is always really helpful to think of here is as you're writing your results, we want to go between Hemingway, he was very tight with his language. He portrayed a lot in very short, effective sentences. And then Charles Dickens, who provided a lot of information through a lot of words, but he told a really beautiful story through that really rich narrative. And so we want to not only provide a good, rich story, we really want to be succinct and focused in our language as well. So we don't need an essay here. Normally a paragraph or two suffices. And then keep in mind as well that when you're writing your result entry, it's helpful as a reflection for you, but we are also really writing for people that are not familiar with what you're doing. So they're going to be people that do not know your day-to-day operations. They might be your department head. They might be some in the provost office. We have individuals from our SAC COC peer review team that read through a lot of our results. And so we're going to want to write for individuals that are not familiar with what we're doing. So whenever we're describing, the test that was administered or the volunteer experience that students participated in or the survey that was sent out, whatever that was, provide some description around that. What test? What volunteer? Why? What survey? Why did this go out? Whenever we say n equals 10, what does that mean? Is that only, is that 10 of 10? Is that 100%? Is that 10 of 90? Is that 9%? Whatever that might be. Make sure you provide that really rich description so that the people that read this information understand what occurred and what we did. And then you'll come down here to the conclusion. And so we have inconclusive, standard of success met, and standard of success not met. If you aren't sure what your standard of success is for your assessment method, you can come up here to this green box here. And so the standard of success is that numerical measure that tells us if we have or have not achieved that learning outcome or that goal. So for this learning outcome, we're looking for 85% of students will receive a combined rating of 3 out of 5 or more on the rubric items for research design. If in our data, we say 95% of students received a combined rating of 3 out of 5, then we will have considered that met. If we say 60% of students received a combined rating of 3 out of 5, that is standard success not met. If it is 84.8% of students received a combined rating of 3 out of 5, we still did not meet that 85. I mean, unless you want to round up, that's, y'all's ballpark, wherever that is. We would still say not met. The only time that we use inconclusive is if the results were unable to be collected. So even if this is like the 1 year out of the past 5 years that students have not achieved this learning outcome, this is so weird, we need to figure out what's going on. You might personally consider that to be inconclusive. We would still consider that standard success not met. During COVID, we had a lot of inconclusive results because, exams were not able to be administered, surveys were not sent out, students were not on campus to complete those capstone experiences, that type of thing. So that's the only time that inconclusive is selected. Otherwise, we want to select standard success met or not met. And then we have here the follow-up on the previous year's action plan. So this does require some familiarity with your prior reporting. And so whenever we talk about the prior year or the previous year's action plan, this is going to be this action use of results here for your previous year. So let's say last year for this learning outcome, for whatever reason, in the action use of results, we said, you know what, the industry is not keeping up with basket weaving like it should. We're going to introduce open educational resources, OER, and transfer students to a new textbook. You know, you would have described all of that here in the action use of results. You'd have provided a timeline, what textbook, why, who's responsible for that, all that kind of stuff. And so this year, in this follow-up, as part of closing the loop, you would come back and say, okay, so I said last year we're going to move to OER in a new textbook because it wasn't following current industry standards. Here's what happened. Here's the impact it had on the results. You know, maybe students learned material 5 times faster. They demonstrated better understanding, whatever that was. You can include that information here because it's going to close the loop on those changes that you were making. If you did not have any action plan or use of results from the prior year for whatever reason, you can add NA to meet this required reporting that's notified by this asterisk here. And then again, the action use of results, like I just said, it's going to be those changes that you're making, the things outside the norm, especially if you did not meet your standard of success, if it was inconclusive. We want to describe how the results will be used, including actions being taken and modifications to your curriculum or pedagogy that are being made. That's on the learning outcome side. If you're on the goal side for a support unit, you're still going to want to describe how the results will be used, including actions being taken and modifications to services or operations. You know, let's say a survey didn't get sent out that's supposed to go out to the whole university to get feedback on certain services or operations. You might describe how you're going to change that service or operation to ensure that that survey is sent out. Or really that's focusing on kind of the assessment methods itself. So maybe we're going to say, hey, you know what, the survey isn't really working anymore. People aren't responding to that. Instead, what we're going to do is go out and poll people, or we're going to ask people when they're in the office if they were satisfied or not, and wherever that might be. Describe how you're going to be making changes based off this, based off the assessment results that you described and reflected on, based off the conclusion you identified, that type of thing. These are all elements of continuous improvement. And then down here in the supporting information, this is a new item that are available. If you have any charts or graphs that you want to include, let's say that you're tracking trend data for student completion of the capstone assignment, whatever that might be, you can copy and paste that chart, that graph, that information in here, and it will now visualize much better than it did before. So that's really what this information here is for. If you have related documents that you want to include, let's say that you want to include separately, not in this document, the Excel file for, you know, tracking this data, or an example of this major research project that it has no identifiable student data in it. You can add those related documents here. Again, we're going to always be looking for that plus sign for add document, and then you'll be able to come through and navigate here. Add a file, add a folder, whatever that might be. It will be added to your document repository, and then you just click save and relate it here to your documents. Let me show y'all what that looks like just real fast. Let's say I want to add a file. I don't 100% know what's going to open up here. Let's see, we're going to look at downloads. We really want to add this article, the contribution of computer science, whatever reason. Whenever you select it, you can change that name if you need to, because that really isn't a great name, but let's say this is actually, the tracking sheet for trend data. I can save that. And now I'll go back and select it, click attach, and you'll see here that it's been related and attached to this result entry here. So you'll be able to go back for all time and be able to say, okay, here's this information that I really needed included and attached to this for any future reference. Once you've made all your updates and changes, make sure you save. Again, whenever you try to leave without saving changes, it will catch you. It's going to give you that double negative. That's going to be kind of hard to navigate around, but whenever you come back out, you'll be able to see here, now is that 24-25 assessment result. We're going to have that really rich description data in there. Our standard success was not met. And then down here, if you double click on it again, oh, pardon me, I forgot to do that. You'll be able to come in and see your other data, your other information that has been added over time. So it's going to give you that really nice, rich assessment result that can build on itself. So you'll be able to see the story of assessment for this assessment method. You would do that again for all of your learning outcomes or goals that are identified for 24-25. So if you have, just for simple math, 2 learning outcome or goals that are assessed for the 24-25 cycle, they each have 2 assessment methods. That's going to be 2 result entries, 2 result entries for a total of 4 result entries is what we would be looking for the 24-25 results. All right. Once you've added the results for all of your learning outcomes or goals that are assessed for 24-25, at that point in time, we're probably going to want to move on to the assessment plan. So we've reported our assessment results, we've gotten caught up on that nice rich data, and now we're looking forward at what we're going to be assessing for the next cycle. So in this example, if we know that this professional behavior and actions learning outcome or goal, this ethical principles to problem solving assessment or learning outcome or goal are going to be assessed for next year as well, we're going to come back in and edit them. Again, you can double click on that name or select those ellipses. If nothing is changing except the fact that we are going to be assessing them for the next year, you don't have to make any changes here. You would come to your planned assessment cycle, click the drop-down menu, and then select 25-26, because that's going to be the next upcoming assessment cycle. See now that I have these 3 historical, past assessment cycles that should hopefully have rich data, and I've also committed to assessing this for the next cycle as well. I'm going to save and close, and now when I come back out, I'm able to see, yep, that's what I assessed it for, and that's the cycle I'm going to assess it for in the future. We can do the same for this ethical principles of problem solving, just to make sure that anyone that reviews this, looks at it, any other peers knows that this is the assessment cycle, or this is the learning outcome or goal that will be assessed next year. And so now we have these 2 learning outcome or goals that we've committed to for 25-26 assessment cycle. Now let's say this critical analyzation decision-making processes, it's still active. But you know what? We talked with our department head, we've talked with our curriculum committee, we've talked with our peers. We're not going to be assessing this anymore. Our students have really knocked it out of the park. We know that we're teaching this really, really well. So we don't need to assess it. You would come in to where you can edit this. Again, if we're going to phase it out, you do learning outcome status, select phased out. Phase out date, again, it's not super important. It's gonna not automatically populate, but will push you to select today's date if for whatever reason it's really important that we know or remember that this was phased out at the end of January 2025. You can change that there. And again, whenever you save and close, you'll be able to come back out and see that that's now phased out. So whenever you come back and look at your assessment plan, you'll know, great, I'm assessing these 2 learning outcome or goals. This one is phased out and is no longer being assessed. Now, let's say as part of that conversation of phasing out critical analyzation decision-making processes, you determined with your department head, your peers, your curriculum committee, your unit, whatever that is, that we need to add a new learning outcome or goal because there's another thing that we think our students can improve on, need to learn, that we need to focus on, or to improve our services and offerings. So again, if we want to add something new, we always navigate to these green circles with a plus sign or gray circle with a green plus sign, however that might be. When you hover over it, it's going to say add a student learning outcome or add a goal. You click there, and it's going to give you this empty student learning outcome or goal card. Real quick, I want to draw your attention to the fact that if I try to navigate between these other cards right now, it won't let me because I don't actually have a learning outcome or goal to tie these two. So for our new learning outcome or goal, remember we want a short reference name here. Let's say that this is maybe community engagement and communication. For this longer explanation, let's say, use my bad spelling right here. We might want to say that the long explanation of this, or what, the full explanation of the starting outcome or goal is that graduating students will be able to demonstrate written and verbal communication skills consistent with industry standards. Because it's new, we want it to be active. And because we have no historical data for this, remember, we're not going to say, you know what, this was something we were kind of doing in 24, 25. I don't really have the data, but I was thinking about it last year because someone is going to say, hey, you said that you were assessing this in 24, 25. Where's your data? We only want to plan forward. At this point, we're adding a new learning outcome or goal. So we're just going to add 25, 26 right here. If you know that this is something you're going to assess for at least 2 or 3 years, you can go ahead and add these future assessment cycles if you know that this will be occurring. I would not recommend doing that if you're uncertain of the longevity of the new learning outcome or goal, simply because if you forget to remove this, if you're not actually going to assess it for 27, 28, it might obligate you to reporting that you're not able to complete. Because we haven't phased it out, we don't need to add a phase out date. The outcome type, we can go ahead and select learning outcome. That will be, simply tie that up. We click save. Notice that now these cards are open. So now, because I've added a new learning outcome or goal, I need to say how we're going to assess it, right? Because I don't have anything in here. Simply having the learning outcome or goal by itself isn't enough. This is the thing that we want to accomplish, and the assessment method is how we are going to accomplish it. So again, we want to add something new. Find your circle with a plus sign. You can select either of these. You'll be able to come in and it's going to give you this empty assessment method card. Again, as you're completing this, I urge you to write for other people. You know what you're doing, and you know your daily operations, and you know your students, you know your tests, your exams, your surveys, your services, your operations, all that kind of stuff. Other people will not be as familiar with that. So I urge you to write for other people. So because this is a new assessment method, we want to mark it as active because it is active for that learning outcome or goal. Whenever we come to assessment type, this is going to be a long drop-down list of the different types of assessment methods that we might be conducting. We might have a comp exam. There might be data log tracking and analysis. This is really helpful for if you're looking at timely completion. Maybe you have a certain audit that's done every year, and there's these different reports that are part of the audit. And so you are tracking the timely completion of these different reports in a data log and then analyzing that data. You might have an embedded assignment, you might have an external review. There's a lot to choose from here. Now, let's say you get down to this forum or focus group and you're like, it could be either of these. I really don't know which one it is. We have over here in this right-hand viewing pane some really helpful resources for you. Related to this assessment type drop-down list, we have a definition of assessment method types. And so these are definitions that were pulled from different resources, the assessment glossary, discussion forums, different glossaries of assessment terms, to provide definitions to you. So whenever you're looking through and you're kind of going back and forth between, is it a forum or a focus group? Is it a forum or a focus group? You're able to come in here and say, oh, okay, focus group, qualitative approach to a small group of people. Forum is a much larger public problem identification or solving session. So it's probably very likely a focus group if you're just getting a small group of students together and taking them through a structured interview or questions. So we can come back over here and say, yep, this is actually a focus group. I'm going to select that. Maybe if you don't want to be in split screen any longer, you can close that and then come back up here to these little boxes. You'll see that we have a 100%, a 75-25, a 50-50, and then a different type of 75-25. And these are just going to be the different types of layouts that you have available to you. Now, as we come to the assessment method, we're going to again want to include some really good, robust information. We want to include what is assessed, who administers the assessment, who is assessed, a description of the measure, when it's administered, and where it's assessed. So this is that that part where I'm encouraging you to write for other people. Because if you simply say every spring, the department will have a focus group, that kind of tells us a little bit of what you're doing, but it really doesn't get into the meat of what is occurring. So whenever we talk about these last two items in particular, the when and where, I'm not looking for something like on March 31st in BA 290. That might be helpful down the road, but what if 290 changes, March 31st is a Saturday next year, that type of thing. What we're really looking for more here is when it's administered in the program. Is it administered in the first semester? Is it administered right before graduation? Is it administered after the completion of a licensure exam? That type of thing. And then where assessed is pretty much the same measure, but we're looking at where in the student journey is this assessed. Is this assessed when the student first enters the program? Is this assessed after the student has completed a certain capstone experience, that type of thing? So these are going to be more specific to the academic program and the journey of the student itself rather than date specific. And so what we would want to include here is looking at what is assessed. So we know that we're looking at community engagement and communication. Who administers the assessment? Is it the program coordinator? Is it the faculty member for psychology 1410? Is it the financial aid director? Like, who is responsible for making sure that that assessment is conducted or sent out? The description of the measure, again, we're going to discuss what it is exactly that we're doing. This is a small group focus group of 10 to 12 students after they've completed the capstone experience, yada, 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 whatever. We're going to be describing that in such a way that someone who is not familiar with our program or our unit understands what's occurring. And then we're going to include here our standard of success. So again, that's that quantitative identification of what we're going to be looking for that demonstrates success to us. So it should be aligned with the assessment method and related to the type of the data collected. So for our academic units, we might say, 80% of students will be rated a 3 out of 5 or higher on the assessment rubric. For this type of focus group, you might say, and you can come at this in a lot of different ways. Maybe you're looking for engagement. So 10 out of the 20 students invited will actually show up. Maybe we're looking for, insights. Maybe 30% of shared insights will be applicable in the next two years. You can come at this from a lot of different ways, depending on what it is that you're hoping to get out of the experience. On our support unit side, again, if we're looking at a survey, maybe it's going to be that 90% of faculty and staff that respond to the survey have identified services as excellent or above, whatever that might be. We're just going to include that quantitative metric. That demonstrates success. And this is the type of thing that might change over time. So let's say that we really knock it out of the park for the first 2 years of 80% of students being rated a 3 out of 5 or higher. So we can approach this in a couple of different ways. Maybe we want to push the envelope a little bit, and now we're looking for 90% of students being rated a 3 out of 5. Maybe we're going to look for 80% of students being rated a 4 out of 5. Maybe we want to do away with that entirely and say, yep, we know that our students know how to do this part. So now we're going to actually close out this assessment method and add a new assessment method to really kind of push us to continue to improve in different ways. There's so many different, interesting, robust ways to come at assessment, depending on what you want to get out of the experience. And then we have a notes section here. So this is optional for documenting any changes to the assessment method or standard of success over time. So again, the assessment method, let's say that this is embedded in psychology 1410. And all of a sudden our, numbering changes, and it's now not psychology 1410, it's the same class as now psychology 1310. Let's just say our numbering changes. And so we have to make that change here. You can include in the notes that used to be psychology 1410 and now it's 1310. If our standard success increases from 80% to 90%, you can include in the notes that Standard success was increased to 90% in spring of 2025, whatever that might be. This is a space for you to reflect and include that information on the changes to the assessment method so that as they change over time, you are able to keep up with why and how they've changed. Because let's say that we moved this to 90% down the road, and a couple of years ago it was 80%, and we were really happy with 82% of our students, achieving a 3 out of 5. As we look at that historical data, if we don't have that context, we're not going to understand why we were happy with 82% when we are now striving for 90 or 95%. But the notes section will allow that space to include that data. I will say that this notes section is going to be available in the reports that we will walk through how to run here in a few minutes. So this is not the space to put anyone on blast or include a note saying, if only Allison was nicer, then we would be able to do no. This is not that space because it is publicly available. So the notes is really just for, information or tracking things related to your assessment method or your standard of success. You are able to add related documents. If you have a copy of the rubric, if you have a copy of the survey, and institutional effectiveness, I keep track of quality touch points with assessment authors and reviewers outside of the assessment cycle. So if I have a meeting with someone about their assessment that did not occur in the 3 weeks prior to or the 3 weeks after the assessment due date, I consider that to be a good quality touch point because we're talking about assessment outside of that due date timeline. And so I add it to my tracking sheet. If I wanted to add a copy of that blank tracking sheet here so that down the road someone else could use it or be able to find it, I can add that if I want to in the related documents. Once you've gotten your assessment method completely built out and updated, make sure you save it. And now whenever you close, you'll be able to see student learning outcome or goal. We have one assessment method. If, as I've mentioned before, you have multiple ways to assess that learning outcome or goal, everything we work through here, you can do again and add another assessment method to it. Because let's maybe say for community engagement and communication, we're going to assess it through a focus group that helps us develop the survey that we want to administer. And then we might have a secondary assessment method that is actually over the survey results itself. Maybe it's a mixed methods type approach, who knows? So we could add that additional assessment method. And then in the future, next year, you come your results and add your assessment results. So now we're able to see that for the 25-26 cycle, we have 2 assessment methods, 2 learning outcomes or goals that we've had for a couple of years. We have 1 learning outcome or goal that we have phased out that we will no longer be assessing. And then we have a brand new learning outcome or goal that we are assessing for the very first time in the upcoming cycle 25-26. I do want to point out here for this phased out learning outcome or goal, please do not delete anything that you will no longer be using or phasing out. That historical data is really, really important to the context of the assessment for your program or unit. If you are phasing something out, just mark it phased out because we want to leave that there. We don't need to remove it. Please do not delete anything. If you feel that something needs to be deleted, you can reach out to either myself or Amanda this week or Amanda Davis moving forward, and we'll be able to assist and help with that. So, following along, what we've done so far to meet that September 1st due date is we have reported all of our assessment results, right? We walked through an example. On your end, you're going to go ahead and complete all the assessment results that are needed. We've gone through and updated the assessment plan where we have done nothing. We changed nothing here and simply added the 25-26, or I guess that's this example here. We did nothing. We changed nothing here. We just added 25-26. In this example, we just changed the clarification that this is now part of the basket weaving industry, and we are still assessing it for 25-26. So we made a very minor change that did not result in a new learning outcome or goal. But then we did go ahead and add a new learning outcome and goal here, this community engagement and communication goal. We did mark it for assessment for the first time in the 25-26 cycle, and we built out the associated assessment units or assessment methods with it. So we did a lot, we reported, we planned, we did all that stuff. And now one of the last things that we need to do, especially because we have a new learning outcome or goal, we want to double check our mapping. And this is also going to be important if you are new to your assessment unit. Because this map is essentially the intersection of your learning outcome or goals and these various maps that we have built in. This example opened up on marketable skills. We do have marketable skills for the institution. We have curriculum mapping available for academic programs that are interested in it. And then this example, unfortunately, does not include it, but we also have strategic plan mapping in here as well. And so that would be an example of, for this academic unit, the college level strategic plan. And so we would have those college level strategic goals here on this axis, this y-axis, with our academic program goals or learning outcomes or support unit, wherever that might be, here on this top x-axis. So I'm just going to work through how to map. It's not going to be that substantive discussion of strategic planning or anything like that. That can occur at a later date if y'all are interested. This is simply going to be how to map within Nuventive. And so if we feel that this new goal here, because remember we have no mapping completed for it, it's brand new, we just added it, community engagement and communication supports the marketable skill of career management. We go back through, we scroll down, we say, yeah, you know what? Graduate students being able to demonstrate written and verbal communication skills consistent with industry knowledge also looks at discipline-specific knowledge. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and say that this goal supports that marketable skill. You know, scroll through and go, oh, yep, written communication. Obviously, we map with that. And then if that's it, if that's all that's occurred, you can click save. And it'll update, and that will kind of be standard. If you're coming back through and you go, wow, this actually doesn't map with career management, I don't know what I was thinking when I selected that, I can't provide any documentation or backup to show how community engagement and communication teaches career management to my students. To unmap it, you just click in the cell again, and it will unmap it, and you'll just have a white cell there. And then just save it again. One of the final steps is going to be looking at review and approval that's completed by a reviewer. So this is going to be something that you would not actually have available to you until well into next fall. I'm just going to include a quick overview of it in this recording just for any future reference. But let's say that you have your department head or another reviewer email and say, I have left a review of your plan and results. They may be your IE representative. Please go in and find that and make the requested changes. You can find those by navigating to this plan review and approval in your main menu, finding that level review that has been completed and clicking on it, navigating there, and it will open up down here the most recently completed samples or completed reviews. Again, this is a sample unit, so I don't have it built out all the way, unfortunately, but I do have here the sample 22-23 rubric that was completed by the IE representative. So as an IE author, if I want to see what this individual left for me as feedback, again, come over to these ellipses. You can click open, and it will take you through this completed rubric. So hopefully your reviewer left some, explicit guidance here in the top over what exactly needed to be done. So in this situation, they wanted me to review the quality of the annual assessment plan and results information by completing the rubric below. Oh no, those are directions, I apologize. Hopefully they left some explicit suggestions or requests for revisions in the comments. And so, okay, revisions requested in assessment methods and results. So now I know whenever I come down here to assessment methods, that needs to be revised. Everything else is good. SLO2 is not aligned with what is being assessed in the SLO. Please revise, include an assessment method that includes or that measures the student's ability to build fences. Really poor example. We don't actually care if students know how to build fences in most of our programs. I think that was probably just something that was easy for me to build out there. But that guidance would push us to go back to that second learning outcome, the assessment method, and then identify and include an assessment method that better measures that learning or that achievement that we want to be able to measure. Same thing for results. We click on results and come down here, we see, okay, there needs to be a revision and the results completion identified. And down here in ethical principles and problem solving SLO, please revise the conclusion as not met. The data does not support standard success met when reviewing that information. So we would then go back to this learning outcome or this goal, revise and not met and include that action use and results, and then email back our reviewer to let them know, hey, I made those changes, please go back in, confirm that they're complete, that we are good to go. They'll let you know that they are, and then we'd be able to, on there, and they'd be able to provide that final review date there. All right, one of the last things that I want to review with y'all is how to run a 2-column report. And so this is going to be a Word document or PDF that can be used to take your assessment results to other people. If you have any kind of external accreditor and you need to include your assessment results there, you're able to do that. It's really just going to kind of surface this assessment data so it's not embedded in Nuventive, and you're able to bring it out and share with other people more easily. So to navigate there, come to your main menu, come down to reports. It might take a little second to generate, but what it's going to build for you is a 2-column report of your assessment data for all years, right? So this is going to be really helpful if you're new or if you have an external accreditor and you want to give them everything that you've ever done in Nuventive, because this is going to be everything for all time. All of your learning outcomes, whether they're active or phased out, all the way back to that first report. You'll notice that this page, or this document, is 13 pages. That's actually pretty short for a all year report. We normally have it around 20 to 25 pages, some of them as long as 30 or 40, depending on the learning outcomes. So this is really helpful if you're new and you want to read through everything. If you're trying to just focus on the most recent data, or maybe just identify the 24-25 results because you really want to make it easy for yourself to see what you talked about last year, come over here to this button here to select your filters. And this will let you filter this report to be more focused on what you want to focus on. So in our planned assessment cycle, let's say I don't want everything that's ever been done. I really just want to look at what I did last year and what I've said I'm going to do next year. The reporting period, it's kind of hard to see there. Here's 24-25. That's going to be that last complete reporting period. Conclusion, we normally leave alone. Assessment method status, we normally leave alone. And then you can click Run Report. Take a second. It's going to produce for you a shorter, notice that we're now at 5 pages, a shorter, more targeted report of the learning outcomes according to the filters that you set. So again, if you really just want to look at what you reported last year, what you said you're going to do next year, your most recent results, that 24-25, what you said you're going to do next year, because maybe you need to have your one-on-one with your department head, your director, your VP, whatever that is, and you want to take these, this will produce for you that targeted report of here's what I did last year and here's what I'm planning to do next year. You're able to download it. You can print it. If you download it, it will download as a Word document, so you can make edits there. Just make sure and remember, if you make edits to your Word document report, they're not going to surface in Nuventive. Whatever edits you make, especially if it's in a meeting, just make sure you log back into Nuventive to make those edits in the system itself. All right, so we covered a lot of information really fast. This is going to be available in this video that I have recording. I'm going to go ahead